The dropship's descent was smooth, its anti-grav engines humming a resonant tone that vibrated through the hull. Outside the thick observation windows, Earth stretched out below, a patchwork of green, blue, and brown. To Commander Kalroth of the Threxian hierarchy, it was an unimpressive sight, a backwater world barely classified as developed by galactic standards. The Threxians, a race of precision and control, had little patience for the disorganized chaos of primitive species. Yet he had been summoned here on a diplomatic mission. His orders were clear: evaluate the humans' so-called military academy and determine if their forces were worth considering as allies, or if they were just another rabble needing Threxian oversight. The landing platform came into view, a stark black rectangle amid the sprawling Human Federation Military Academy complex. Kalroth's compound eyes flicked over the bustling scene below. Humans, fragile, two-limbed creatures, moved in hurried but purposeful patterns. He spotted uniforms of varying colors, drones zipping overhead, and the occasional flash of what he assumed were training simulations. Despite himself, he felt a flicker of curiosity. Perhaps they weren't as disorganized as his briefing suggested. The ramp hissed open and Kalroth stepped onto Earth's soil. Waiting to greet him was General Naomi Carter, a tall, imposing figure with sharp eyes and a disarmingly warm smile. She extended a hand, a human gesture Kalroth found odd but had learned to reciprocate. Her grip was firm, her eyes unwavering. "Commander Kalroth," she said, her tone professional. "Welcome to the Human Federation Military Academy. We're honored to have you here." Kalroth inclined his head slightly, his mandibles clicking in acknowledgement. "General Carter, the honor is mine. I look forward to observing your facilities." "Excellent," Carter replied. "We've prepared a full tour. You'll see every aspect of our training regimen. I think you'll find it enlightening." Kalroth couldn't suppress a subtle ripple of skepticism across his carapace. Enlightening? Unlikely. Yet, as they began their tour, he couldn't shake the growing sense that he was about to witness something far more profound, and far more disturbing, than he had anticipated. The first stop was the Academy's simulation chambers, housed in a towering building that pulsed with energy. Carter led Kalroth inside, where rows of young cadets were strapped into advanced virtual reality rigs. Holographic screens displayed their progress in real time, showing intricate battle scenarios that ranged from small skirmishes to full-scale planetary invasions. Kalroth tilted his head, his antennae twitching. The scenarios were impressively detailed, but they were simulations, nothing more. He conveyed this thought to Carter with a subtle tilt of his mandibles. "We found that training the mind is just as important as training the body," Carter explained. "Our cadets face these scenarios repeatedly, refining their strategies, learning to adapt. Every mistake here is a lesson learned in safety." Kalroth's eyes narrowed. "And yet, simulations are no substitute for real combat. They lack consequence." Carter's smile didn't waver. "That's true. Which is why this is only the beginning." They moved on to the live combat training fields. Here, Kalroth saw humans engaging in brutal hand-to-hand combat, their movements swift and precise. Others fired weapons at targets that moved unpredictably, mimicking enemy patterns. The sound of gunfire and shouted commands filled the air, a cacophony that grated on Kalroth's Threxian sensibilities. Yet he couldn't deny the efficiency of their movements, the focus in their eyes. "What do you think so far?" Carter asked, her tone conversational. Kalroth hesitated. "It is rigorous. But discipline is only one part of effective warfare. Tell me, General, how do you instill loyalty and unity among such a disparate species? Your kind lacks the hive-mind cohesion of the Threxian." Carter chuckled, a sound Kalroth found both odd and unsettling. "We do it through something you might find difficult to understand, Commander. We call it individuality." Kalroth was about to respond when the tour moved to the psychological conditioning wing. Here, cadets were subjected to high-stress environments, their mental resilience tested to the breaking point. Simulated hostage situations, catastrophic failures, and impossible moral dilemmas played out on screens. Kalroth watched as one cadet broke down in tears, only for their instructor to guide them through the scenario again, calmly and methodically. "Why push them so far?" Kalroth asked, his voice tinged with unease. "This seems excessive." "Because war doesn't care about comfort," Carter replied. "We train our people to face the unimaginable, so they're ready when it becomes reality." Kalroth felt a chill, not from the room but from the sheer intensity of the humans' methods. The Threxians relied on collective strategy, on overwhelming precision and order. This was something else entirely. The final stop of the day was the historical archives. Carter led Calroth into a vast hall filled with holographic displays and physical artifacts. The walls were lined with records of Earth's military history, wars that spanned centuries, each more brutal than the last. Calroth studied the images, humans in trenches and tanks on ships that sailed the stars. Each display was a testament to their resilience, their capacity for destruction, and their willingness to endure. "These are your victories?" Calroth asked, his voice low. "Some," Carter replied. "Others are reminders of our failures. Both teach us valuable lessons." Calroth's gaze lingered on a display showing the aftermath of a nuclear explosion. The raw devastation was unlike anything he had seen in Threxian history. "You used this on yourselves?" Carter nodded solemnly. "Twice, in fact. It was a turning point for us. A lesson we've never forgotten." Calroth felt an unfamiliar emotion stirring within him. Fear? No, not quite. It was something deeper, a realization that these humans were not the primitive species he had dismissed. They were survivors, shaped by a history of conflict and loss that had forged them into something terrifying. As the tour concluded, Carter extended her hand again. Calroth hesitated before accepting it, his mind racing. He had come here to assess the humans' military potential, to judge whether they were allies or liabilities. Instead, he found himself wondering if the galaxy was ready for what humanity had to offer. "Thank you for your time, Commander," Carter said, her smile enigmatic. "We look forward to working with you." Calroth managed a stiff nod. "The honor is mine." As he boarded his dropship, Calroth couldn't shake the feeling that he had glimpsed something truly alien, not in their technology but in their spirit. And it terrified him. The dropship's engines roared to life as it lifted from the Human Federation Military Academy, the sights and sounds of the day replaying in Commander Calroth's mind. Despite his meticulous Threxian training, which prided itself on detachment and logic, he couldn't suppress the lingering unease from what he had witnessed. The academy wasn't a training ground, it was a forge, and the humans were the molten metal. They tempered their weaknesses, shaped their strengths, and burned away anything that might hinder them. And it wasn't just their methods that disturbed him. It was the undercurrent of something far more dangerous, a capacity for destruction born not of recklessness but of necessity. But Calroth wasn't done. The tour was far from complete. The general had arranged for him to stay at the academy for 2 more days, promising a deeper look into their operational philosophy. He didn't know whether to feel intrigued or horrified. The next morning began with an invitation to observe a classified exercise known as the Gauntlet. General Carter met him on the observation deck, a high-tech room overlooking a massive training arena. The space below was divided into sections, each simulating different hostile environments: blistering deserts, frozen wastelands, dense alien jungles, and zero-gravity chambers. "The Gauntlet is one of our most grueling tests," Carter explained. "It's designed to push cadets to their physical and psychological limits." Calroth's compound eyes blinked in tandem. "A test of endurance?" Carter's smile was sharp. "Endurance, creativity, and adaptability. Watch and you'll see." A group of cadets entered the arena below, their faces a mix of determination and trepidation. They were equipped with basic survival gear and handheld weapons, but nothing else. A voice echoed through the arena, calm yet commanding. "Cadets, your objective is simple: survive and complete your mission. Good luck." The simulation began immediately. A desert storm erupted in one quadrant, obscuring vision and battering the cadets with high-speed winds. In another section, robotic drones emerged, firing non-lethal but painful projectiles. The cadets scrambled, their movements disorganized at first, but quickly synchronizing as they communicated through shouts and hand signals. Calroth leaned closer to the glass, his antennae twitching. He could see the fear on their faces, but what struck him was how they adapted. Each challenge brought out a new strategy. They repurposed their limited gear, improvised weapons, and coordinated in ways he hadn't anticipated. One cadet, cornered by drones, used a piece of reflective metal to blind her attackers, creating an opening for her team to flank the enemy. Another, trapped in the zero-gravity chamber, manipulated the environment to launch himself toward an objective, using momentum to outmaneuver obstacles. "This level of autonomy, it's chaotic," Calroth remarked, his voice a mixture of awe and unease. "Your cadets are not adhering to any centralized doctrine?" Carter nodded. "That's the point. In the field, centralized doctrine can fall apart. Comms can fail. Resources can deplete. What matters is that they survive and complete the mission. Every cadet here is trained to think independently and make decisions under pressure. It's not chaos, Commander, it's adaptability. Kalroth didn't respond immediately. He couldn't argue with the results. The cadets, despite their individual approaches, achieved their objectives with brutal efficiency. They emerged from the simulation battered, bruised, and exhausted, but alive. Do all your soldiers go through this? Kalroth asked. Every single one, Carter replied. After the gauntlet, the tour moved to the Weapons Development Division. Kalroth was guided through a labyrinthine complex filled with the hum of advanced machinery and the occasional pulse of experimental weaponry being tested. Engineers in lab coats tinkered with devices that looked both primitive and unnervingly innovative. What you're seeing here, Carter said, gesturing to the bustling labs, is our answer to the ever-changing nature of warfare. We don't just build weapons, we build solutions. Kalroth paused in front of a transparent chamber where a prototype was being tested. A soldier held a compact rifle that emitted a low-frequency hum. When fired, the weapon released a burst of energy that disintegrated a target drone into dust. A plasma disruptor? Kalroth asked, his tone tinged with skepticism. We've had these for centuries. Not like this, Carter said, gesturing for the demonstration to continue. The soldier fired again, this time at a cluster of drones. The burst of energy ricocheted between the targets, eliminating them in rapid succession. Kalroth's mandibles twitched. Adaptive resonance? That's sophisticated. It is, Carter said. We're always refining. But more importantly, we don't rely solely on technology. For every advanced weapon we develop, we make sure our soldiers know how to fight without it. Redundancy saves lives. The commander couldn't argue with that logic, but it unsettled him. The humans were not simply innovating, they were hedging against failure, preparing for worst-case scenarios. It was a level of foresight he hadn't expected from such a chaotic species. The day's final stop was the Academy's Cultural Indoctrination Program, an aspect of their training that Kalroth found particularly perplexing. The facility was part museum, part library, and part theater. Cadets were seated in a large auditorium, watching a dramatic reenactment of a pivotal moment in human history, the Battle of Novosibirsk. On the screen, actors portrayed soldiers fighting against impossible odds. Their enemy was an alien force that outnumbered and outgunned them. Yet the humans fought on, their determination unyielding. The narration was laced with themes of sacrifice, camaraderie, and the will to survive. Why show this to your cadets? Kalroth asked. Surely they already understand the importance of battle. This isn't about battle, Carter said. It's about what we're fighting for. Every soldier here needs to understand the stakes. We don't just train warriors, we train protectors. They need to know why they're willing to risk everything. Kalroth remained silent, his gaze fixed on the screen. The human's capacity for self-sacrifice was alien to him. Threxians fought for the collective, for the hive. Humans fought for something far more intangible, and perhaps far more dangerous. As the reenactment ended, the cadets stood and saluted, their expressions a mixture of pride and solemnity. Kalroth felt a pang of discomfort. He had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species with delusions of grandeur. Instead, he found a race forged by adversity, driven by something he couldn't fully understand. As he left the auditorium, Carter turned to him, her expression unreadable. So, Commander, what do you think so far? Kalroth hesitated. Your methods are unconventional, but effective. I see why your species has survived despite the odds. Carter's smile was faint but knowing. You haven't seen the half of it yet? Kalroth couldn't help but wonder what else humanity had in store, and whether the galaxy was prepared for it. The sun dipped low over the Human Federation Military Academy, casting long shadows across the sprawling campus. Commander Kalroth's exoskeleton reflected the fading light as he followed General Carter toward the underground facilities. Though he had already seen more than he'd anticipated, the Threxian commander knew that the humans had yet to reveal their full hand. His instincts told him that whatever lay beneath the surface would redefine his understanding of humanity, and not in a comforting way. This way, Commander, Carter said, leading him to a secure elevator. The reinforced doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a chamber illuminated by pulsating blue lights. A holographic panel appeared as Carter pressed her palm against it. The elevator descended in silence, the hum of its machinery the only sound. Kalroth's antennae twitched. You seem to keep your most critical operations underground. Is this for protection or secrecy? Carter smirked. Both. Some things are better left hidden, for our safety and everyone else's. The elevator came to a halt, and the doors opened to reveal a cavernous space. The room was lined with reinforced observation windows overlooking a series of massive chambers. Inside each chamber, simulations played out. Soldiers combating artificial intelligence drones, testing experimental vehicles, and engaging in tactical scenarios that bordered on the surreal. The scale and complexity of the operations were staggering. "This is the Vanguard Initiative," Carter explained, gesturing toward the activity. "It's where we push our best and brightest to the limits of what's possible. Here we train more than soldiers. We train problem solvers, strategists, and, if necessary, survivors of the worst-case scenario." Kalroth stepped closer to one of the observation windows. Below, a squad of soldiers faced an unrelenting swarm of mechanized foes. The environment shifted around them, morphing from a barren wasteland to a dense jungle without warning. The soldiers adapted instantly, switching tactics and weapons as though they had rehearsed the scenario 1,000 times. "What exactly are you preparing for?" Kalroth asked, his voice tinged with unease. Carter's expression grew serious. "Everything. War, exploration, diplomacy gone wrong. Even extinction events. Humanity learned long ago that complacency is a death sentence. We don't just plan for the likely, we prepare for the unthinkable." The next chamber was even more disconcerting. Kalroth watched as a lone human soldier engaged in hand-to-hand combat against an alien combatant twice his size. The alien was one of the strongest species in the known galaxy, a member of the Kraxer whose warriors were feared for their raw power. Yet the human wasn't just holding his own, he was winning. "How is this possible?" Kalroth muttered, his compound eyes narrowing as the human flipped the Kraxer onto its back with a move that seemed to defy physics. "Leverage," Carter said, as though it were the simplest explanation in the world. "Humans aren't the strongest species in the galaxy, Commander. Not by a long shot. But we're resourceful and we learn fast. Every weakness becomes a lesson. Every failure a stepping stone." Kalroth couldn't look away. The fight ended with the Kraxer yielding, and the human offered a hand to help his opponent up. The gesture was unexpected, almost insulting. Among the Threxians, an opponent's defeat was final, not an opportunity for camaraderie. "Why show mercy?" Kalroth asked. "Mercy isn't weakness," Carter replied. "It's strategy. A defeated enemy today can be an ally tomorrow. That's something we've learned through centuries of conflict." The words hung in the air, their weight sinking into Kalroth's mind. Humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to survive in a way that ensured their enemies might one day join them. It was a perspective he found both fascinating and deeply unsettling. The final stop on this underground tour was the most chilling yet. Carter led Kalroth to a massive vault, its entrance guarded by automated turrets and thick blast doors. Inside, the air was cold and sterile, and the walls were lined with containment units holding something. "What is this place?" Kalroth asked, his mandibles clicking nervously. Carter stopped in front of one of the units and tapped a control panel. The glass darkened, revealing a pulsating mass of bioorganic matter. It writhed and shifted as though it were alive, its form impossible to fully comprehend. "This," Carter said, "is Project Revenant. A last resort." Kalroth's exoskeleton visibly stiffened. "What kind of last resort?" Carter's eyes locked onto his. "One that ensures humanity's survival at any cost." She explained that Project Revenant was a collection of experimental lifeforms and technologies designed to be unleashed only in scenarios where humanity faced total annihilation. The organisms inside the containment units were engineered to adapt to any environment, to consume and repurpose any resource. They were, in essence, unstoppable. "This is madness," Kalroth said, stepping back from the glass. "No," Carter corrected. "This is pragmatism. We hope never to use them, Commander." But hope isn't a strategy. The Threxian commander's mind raced. He had seen enough to know that humanity was unlike any species he had encountered. They were relentless, resourceful, and unyielding in their pursuit of survival. And now he understood the depths of their resolve. As they left the vault, Carter spoke again, her tone softer but no less resolute. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, Commander. We didn't choose to become this way. But the universe didn't give us much of a choice." Kalroth didn't respond. For the first time in his long military career, he felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name: fear. Not of humanity's weapons or tactics, but of their indomitable will. As they ascended back to the surface, Kalroth couldn't shake the realization that the humans were prepared for scenarios he hadn't even imagined. They were a species that refused to be cornered, that thrived under pressure, and that would do whatever it took to ensure their survival. The galaxy had underestimated them. And Kalroth now knew that was a mistake they might not live to regret. Commander Kalroth stood in the open-air observation deck atop the Human Federation Military Academy, gazing out over the sprawling complex. The evening air was cool and crisp, the stars above glittering like 1,000 unblinking eyes. He felt small beneath their gaze, as though the vastness of the cosmos was silently judging the weight of his newfound understanding. Beside him, General Carter seemed unusually reflective. She held a cup of coffee in her hands, the steam curling upward in ghostly spirals. Despite the horrors Kalroth had witnessed, Carter seemed at ease, as though the brutal efficiency of her academy was as natural as breathing. "You've been quiet, Commander," Carter said, breaking the silence. "What's on your mind?" Kalroth's antennae drooped slightly, an involuntary sign of distress among his kind. "I underestimated your species, General. And I believe the galaxy has as well. You've built more than an army here. You've built a philosophy, a way of life centered on survival and dominance." Carter nodded, her expression neutral. "Survival, yes. Dominance? No. Humanity's strength isn't in conquering others, it's in refusing to be conquered ourselves. There's a difference." Kalroth turned to face her, his compound eyes shimmering. "I saw what you call Project Revenant. I watched your soldiers adapt to scenarios that would break most other species. I've seen your people turn desperation into ingenuity. What concerns me most isn't your weapons, General. It's your spirit. It's unrelenting." Carter smiled faintly. "You say that like it's a bad thing?" Kalroth hesitated. "For the galaxy? It might be." Their conversation was interrupted by the distant hum of engines. A fleet of drones soared across the campus, their formation precise and calculated. Below, cadets sparred in hand-to-hand combat drills, their movements as fluid and practiced as the drones overhead. Everywhere Kalroth looked, he saw the same pattern: relentless preparation, unyielding discipline. Carter sipped her coffee, her gaze following the drones. "You know, Commander, humanity wasn't always this way. We were once softer. Naive even. We believed that diplomacy and cooperation would always prevail. That reason would be enough to stave off conflict. And what changed?" Kalroth asked, though he already suspected the answer. "The universe," Carter replied simply. "It taught us that survival requires more than hope. It requires sacrifice, adaptability, and, sometimes, a willingness to fight for what you believe in. We didn't become this out of ambition. We became this out of necessity." Kalroth mulled over her words. He had long considered the Threxians to be the epitome of resilience. Their rigid hierarchy, their unyielding commitment to their own survival, surely they were among the strongest species in the galaxy. And yet, standing here, he realized that humanity's approach was fundamentally different. Where the Threxians relied on tradition and conformity, humanity thrived on chaos and innovation. As the night deepened, Carter led Kalroth to a final meeting room, its walls lined with screens displaying star maps and tactical overlays. A holographic table dominated the center of the room, its surface alive with shifting images of the galaxy. Carter gestured for Kalroth to take a seat. "I wanted to show you this," she said, activating the table. The hologram shifted to display a sector of the galaxy teeming with activity. Fleets moved along trade routes, colonies expanded, and borders shifted. "This is the galaxy as it is," Carter continued. "Chaotic. Unpredictable. Everyone vying for resources, territory, and power." Kalroth studied the display. "And this concerns you?" "It does," Carter admitted. "But not for the reasons you think." She tapped a control and the image changed. The trade routes vanished, replaced by a sprawling web of conflict zones and disputed territories. "This is what the galaxy will become if we don't find a way to work together. Endless war. Endless suffering. No species, not even ours, can survive that forever." Kalroth's antennae twitched. "You think humanity can unite the galaxy?" Carter shook her head. "Not unite. Stabilize. Humanity's resilience isn't just for us, it's something we can share. But make no mistake, Commander. If the galaxy forces us to choose between survival and peace, we will always choose survival." The following morning, as Kalroth prepared to leave the academy, he found himself reflecting on everything he had witnessed. The humans had shown him their strength, their adaptability, and their unyielding spirit. They had revealed their darkest secrets, their ultimate contingencies, and their unwavering commitment to survival. And yet, they had also shown him something else, something that left him deeply conflicted. Beneath their calculated pragmatism and ruthless preparation, there was a thread of hope. A belief that the galaxy could be more than just a battleground. As his shuttle ascended into the atmosphere, Kalroth looked down at the Academy one last time. He knew that what he had seen would change the way he approached his own people, his own strategies. Humanity had taught him a lesson he would not soon forget. Strength was not just about weapons or numbers. It was about willpower. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long. Kalroth realized that if the universe ever truly pushed them into a corner, humanity wouldn't just survive. They would endure. And they would do so on their own terms. As the stars enveloped his shuttle, Kalroth whispered to himself, "May the galaxy never make the mistake of testing their resolve again."